Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. Big live stream today because we have huge news in a sense with the potential Jota injury impacting a lot of our kind of plays for 26. And 26 has a lot of impacts on 27, even 30, I think are weeks to think about in the very near future, depending on some of the FA Cup results as well, seeing if we can actually keep, for example, some West Ham players in our team and things like that. Um, the big issue here, I would say, is that you either have to kind of gamble away from Jota and go into an Arsenal player, locking yourself in for a free hit in 27, or you move towards a strategy where you move away from Jota this week. You go for someone like a Heung-min Son, who would be great anyways on 27, and then you can kind of think about flexibly planning around game week 30. Hey, Sir Ebius, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. So, what are your guys' thoughts and feelings about the kind of latest news? I can show you what my team transfer wise will look like. I'm actually planning not to um, go into or go out of Jota rather. So my plan really is to go into Tierney, into Ramsdale, into Salah, play the triple captaincy on Salah. So I will be actually playing Tierney, Trent, Cody, and then Cancelo. So a back four, and then going for a midfield four of Rafinha, Salah, Bowen, and Coutinho, and they would be supported by Dennis and Edouard. My real ideas for this is that I can't go into, let's say, Jota to Son in a single transfer. So therefore, there isn't much of a value, I think, going in for a -4 there, because it has to be a -8 and Antonio has to go out for Broja. And I don't even necessarily see the need to play Broja in a week where Dennis and Edouard still have doubles, even though their ceiling, I would say, isn't super high. The one thing too with going out of Jota is that if I go into Saka, that -4 just doesn't seem that worth it to me, because the potential trade-off is just having Cancelo in the single game week. And considering Spurs' recent form, I think there's a high chance, to be quite honest, that Cancelo would actually get decent points there, or even actually provide something from the offensive end from what we've seen from him this season. Hey Henry, how are you doing? So I might actually look at some Twitter questions for now, just because I imagine a lot of people have some questions in terms of strategy, and we'll kind of wait for the YouTube chat to populate with some more viewers for now. All right, so let's go into Twitter. So Chirag here has, let's actually start from the top. So what should my plans be for double game week? You've got 2-3 transfers and can take more. So you're confused and you'd like to know my thoughts. So I think if we just look at your team and make an assessment of players we'd actually like, I would actually say Emerson Royale is someone I'd be quite happy to move away from. I think you can go from Jota straight to Salah as a very simple transfer. That would leave us with 1.4 million in the bank, and we can kind of think about that very briefly. I would still probably stick with Edouard and King, so that gives you a front two at the very minimum. We can think about Antonio in a second. I would definitely play Cancelo, Trent, and Cody, so that's going to be a back three at the very minimum. We can now think about Laporte and Royale as placeholders. Coutinho and Bowen, I still think have very, very good singles, so I would play them. Even Foden arguably has a good single. I don't really think there's a particular reason that we should think about taking Foden out of our teams, just because I would say, unless you're going from Foden to Saka and you want to play around that, that could be a potential possibility. But I would actually rather maybe go out of Emerson Royale and try and go for Tierney instead. Because the way I see it is, you can probably go towards avoiding the free hit in 27. You can play something like Cancelo, Trent, Tierney, Cody, and then you can play Salah, Foden, Bowen, Coutinho, Rafinha. Sorry, I think you can actually maybe even potentially bench one of Rafinha, Coutinho, Bowen, Foden, and then just play Edouard and King. Have an Antonio on your bench. That's a possibility there, I would say. You can also drop Cancelo to be your first bench. Just bring Tierney in, and then bring Salah in. Triple captain Salah, and just play like that. Because I'm thinking a lot of people are going for hits. You would actually stand to benefit as someone who has 2 free transfers and has a very strong team already. So I would prefer you being in a position where you only have 3, let's say, on-field, basically non-keeper players from Arsenal and Liverpool, and you'd have that in Salah, Trent, and Tierney as an example, and then that kind of back three or 3-5-2 setup where Foden plays I think would be quite interesting. You can maybe even think about maybe playing Cancelo ahead of Foden. I think maybe that's your kind of deliberation. You either bench Cancelo and Foden, don't have to go for a -4, and you try to play around that. I think that could be an interesting structure. And then you can think about maybe spending the remainder 1.2 million that isn't related to Tierney and Salah in the subsequent week, where maybe you could go for something like a Burnley gamble. Let's say if Rafinha isn't very interesting, you could maybe move into Cornet in the subsequent week, or even move away from Antonio in the subsequent week where Broja is interesting. I know your plan is to bench boost, but I just feel like the ceiling of some players is quite low. I think recently we've seen Antonio just doesn't seem that interesting. Newcastle have also stepped up a bit defensively. What I do like about your bench boost though is Sanchez versus Burnley is quite an interesting bench boost. Maybe you could still bench boost if you don't want to triple captain Salah, but I would still go for the transfers away from Jota and away from Royale, just so you can actually have Salah to leverage off the triple captainers, and then you can have Tierney, who I think is a little bit more interesting than Saka this week. If I had to compare like kind of like for like Arsenal assets. Just gonna refresh the YouTube chat very quickly. So Mohammed is asking me who I'm gonna captain. I'm probably gonna triple captain Salah if I'm being completely honest. Just looking back on my team, it seems quite obvious that I would be going for Salah. Yogi, how are you doing? Hi. Rio, how are you doing? Nice to meet you as well. Cyril, you've got Kane, so Jota out. Son doesn't sit well. Yeah, I see what you mean there. Jota for Saka will leave me to Liverpool only. I do actually quite like that, Cyril, because once again you get yourself out of any problems that might arise from the free hit in 27 or needing to free hit. You can avoid that, and I think that's totally fine, because when we think about Liverpool players, who are the high ceiling players? Potentially Robertson. Someone like Jota is going to be another option too. Hey Jax, thank you very much for the comments. But yeah, just going back to your point, Cyril, I think it's totally fine, because the other kind of high ceiling player for Liverpool, I would say, is Robertson, but he might be impacted by really just having Tsimikas actually playing this weekend particularly, and that could kind of take him out of contention as a high ranking asset. The other one is going to be Mane, who's probably out of reach price wise for you. And then moving towards Firmino is a change of position, so once again, not really worth it because of the double transfer involved. So I do like the idea of actually simply going for Jota for Saka if the situation makes sense for some owners. For me, as you can see with my team, if I went for Jota to Saka, I would still put myself in the situation where I would have, let's say, 4 Liverpool and Arsenal players, not even counting Ramsdale, who is totally fine to be swapped out for Sanchez next week, where I'd probably have to make a transfer out of one of those players again. And I don't really see the point of doing that when I don't see too much of an upside, dropping Cancelo when I can just play Cancelo next week, the way I have my team set up. Mohammed says Jota to Salah and Emerson, Tomiyasu. Fair enough. I do like Tierney as a move a little bit more than Tomiyasu, just because we've seen Tierney actually, he's relatively injury free, and I think he's just a little bit more of a higher ceiling asset, especially in a double. Ronaldo to Lacazette, I think that's a very sensible move, especially if you're already holding that much money in Ronaldo slash Kane type assets. The one thing I would be worried about with Lacazette is how much money is being held in your team. But if you're planning to free hit on 27, then I can kind of understand going for that play. Crazy, I hope you're doing well as well this week. Mohammed, I was actually speaking towards just Chirag from Twitter. King to Huang and Lamptey to Tarkovsky. I do like those moves, actually. I'm not so sure about King to Huang. I wouldn't say Huang has a super high ceiling compared to King. So maybe that move seems a little bit like a side grade. I do like Lamptey to Tarkovsky, though, just because Tarkovsky has very interesting 26 and 27s. I will be triple captaining this week, Sir Ebius, myself. Bench Cucurella, Ramsey, or Watkins. I'd probably bench... Oof, tough question. I'd actually probably bench maybe one of Watkins... And, yeah, I'd probably bench Watkins, actually, because I'm thinking Cucurella has a very strong chance of getting a clean sheet. My rank right now is 64k. Storm in the UK will affect any matches. I'm not aware of that right now, Nick, so we'll see what happens as it develops. And yeah, thank you, Chirag, as well. So let's have a look at Manish from Twitter. So he says, should I get rid of Tomiyasu for Cucurella or White? Why would you want to get rid of Tomiyasu? Does he have a kind of injury situation? I think he's actually back in training now, so um, I'm not sure. So well, I think you probably kind of follow the news and see whether he's ready to actually play the game. If he's not ready, I would actually just prefer you moving towards something like a Wolves defender if you didn't have one already. I can see that you don't have a Wolves defender in your team, so if Tomiyasu is to miss out for sure, I would either go for, excuse me, sorry, I'd go for Tierney or a Wolves defender, someone like Cody who's a bit safer. I wouldn't go for Dean this week. I think you want to capitalize on the doubles. Retep says, thinking of transferring in Soar for Bruno and maybe, I guess that means Son. And then taking a -4 for either Tierney or Dean or Ramsdale for De Gea as you like him long term. I do like the upside of going for Tierney, to be honest. But I do think it's better to actually go into Ramsdale. The reason why I say this is because you've already got triple Liverpool assets. And I think if you bring in Tierney, I would say it's quite similar to getting Ramsdale. So I would prefer you going for Ramsdale just over Dean for now. It's an interesting situation, isn't it? But that's just because I think everyone else in your team has doubles and good matches. So I'm just kind of thinking about the on-field players and whether they're actually worth keeping. And in actuality, I do think they are. So yeah, I would probably play the Ramsdale move. Son for Bruno is... I'm not so sure about that move personally. Reason why I say that is just because I feel like that Man City game is a bit of a trap when we consider what kind of double game week it is. I also think that the single game week of United with Fernandes versus Leeds is very interesting. I would actually just go for one of the Arsenal moves, and I think the reason why I suggest Ramsdale as well is because you have 3 Liverpool players already. In reality, you can actually have 11 playing players next week if you take out De Gea for Ramsdale, because you can put Sanchez and play Sanchez. Then you avoid any kind of free hit 27 issues. And I think Fernandes actually has a very, very good single versus Leeds, because when we look at the historical games between United and Leeds, I just feel like Leeds, the way they play, almost is set up for United to actually succeed, just because of the quality United have on side. Now, of course, there was this big 0-0 game once last year, but you can see how high scoring these games are. Feels like every time you watch United versus Leeds, it's just an opportunity for United to shine. Rio, will I start Cancelo, and who I will? Yeah, I will start Cancelo personally. But if you're talking about your team, I'd probably honestly bench Cancelo. I think you've done the right thing there. I do think Reguilon actually does defend Mahrez quite well, but just because everyone has doubles and is relatively nailed, I would say you keep the team as it is. A little bit of a weird situation, but I think you have the bench order in the right place, Rio. Manish, you need better points. Yeah, I agree you need better points, but I would say Tierney or Wolves defender, because you want to think long-term as well, and these Arsenal and Wolves defenders will be playing in Game Week 30. And then just looking at your team, since you only have 2 Liverpool players, you can actually afford going for Tierney yourself. That's kind of how I see things. So let's have a look at Tat's team. So he's got 1 free hit left. He plans to wildcard in Game Week 31. In Game Week 26, he plans to take a -12, so huge moves there. Ramsdale, Tierney, Salah, Saka, all very, very good moves. I assume he's probably got a free... Okay, not free hitting in 27, fair enough, so just going straight to Coutinho. Interesting. And then going back into Saka the next week. So that's a little bit of a weird plan. I would, but I mean, that's fair enough. Looking at your team, I would actually be quite interested in going for someone like Broja. Because 2027, Broja has quite an interesting game, no? Or am I wrong there? Yeah, so Broja is interesting in 27. I think he could be a consideration for some of your plans. But up to you really how you plan to play around that. Just gonna quickly go back to YouTube chat for a quick second. Do I have a free hit template? I mean, we can work on that together, Frederick, if you want. We can look at a free hit template together. Play two between Dean or Rafinha. I mean, I'd probably play Rafinha and Watkins, to be quite honest. I just feel like the Aston Villa team has been quite poor from a defensive end. So if anything, I know it doesn't seem that interesting because there was all those quotes as well from Gerrard saying that he wasn't impressed, and Watkins is one of those players who were kind of reported by people who follow Aston Villa as someone who might be kind of out of the team. Yeah, maybe I guess from that basis, then you can play Dean and you drop Watkins and probably play Rafinha as well. Good point there, Cyril. Is 7 doubles with -4 hit taken reasonable? I think it's very reasonable for sure. I think honestly hits. It's a weird mix because I think you have players in the community who are very happy to take hits, and then people who strongly kind of stand by not taking hits. But I think people have been equally successful taking either approach. I think when you decide to go aggressive, as long as it kind of follows your own philosophy as an FPL manager, I wouldn't ever criticize it too much. Obviously, you want to avoid taking too many side grades for hits. I think you always want to make sure that in theory at least you won't capture it completely because of what happens and the variance in football naturally, but whenever you do take hits, I think you should always be thinking about how a player might be, you know, 1 or even 2 levels above as an upgrade individually or cumulatively if you're taking, you know, a double transfer, such as, for example, I don't know, going out of Jota so that you can go into Robertson or things like that. Broja or Ramsey, in terms of playing this week, I'd probably go for Broja if I was to start someone this week. Best captain for 27. I think Son is quite interesting as a captain for 27. I imagine some people might go for what seems like a safer captaincy in terms of going for a Brighton player. A Burnley player. But I do think Son might be the best captain. How many total transfers have I made? I'm not actually sure. I mean, I can have a look at that. Is there like an easy way to kind of count up how many transfers you've made? Because I haven't really tallied it up myself so far. Alonso, Bruno, and Jota for Cody, Salah, and Son for -4. That seems very, very interesting, Elias. I'd probably do that. It counts for you in the points section. All right, fair enough. Let's have a look at that. If I just click on transfers, right? Does it count at the end? Have I made a mistake? I've done a lot of transfers. Let's just say that. Oh, total transfers, sorry, 36. Fabulous. But that includes some transfers I've already made for this week. I've done some early transfers after the Champions League games. A little cheeky, but yeah. So I would basically be on the same page as you, pretty much 33 for now. I like the move going for Son this week if you can find space for it, and that's what I was kind of saying with Jota. I think because I personally can't afford going for Jota in my team or going for Son immediately because I just don't have enough money. That is the main concern for me. I would prefer going for Son and Broja in the subsequent week just because Son is more interesting there, and I think he actually has a true ceiling versus Leeds. As opposed to this week where I can just play Cancelo and be happy with Cancelo coming in place of Jota. Would I start Watkins or Broja this week? Definitely Broja. I would start Broja. Let's have a look at Stefan's team. So me, yep, nice pick there. As I said in my cheat sheet video, I think me or Tarkowski are the safest options if you go for a Burnley defender, and I like to see that you've done that. I would definitely consider, if I were you, to maybe switch De Gea into Ramsdale. The reason why I say that is because that might save you some aches and pains in the subsequent week, and I really think that Ramsdale is a much better alternative this week. However, if you're playing Foster and you're planning to start Foster this week, I can completely understand. Maybe that's your kind of strategy. And keeping Alonso, that's interesting. Okay. Son, Weghorst, Broja. So the weird thing for me is that, Son and Broja don't have, for me, some of the greatest ceilings this week. I think they're much more interesting in the subsequent week. But I can see the future planning there. I just don't necessarily see whether it's worth the -16. Another thing too is when you're going for White, I feel like he's got quite a low ceiling too as an Arsenal player. He isn't very aggressive when it comes to providing any kind of offensive surplus for this Arsenal team. So that's a slight concern there. I would rather you maybe go for Cody, someone who's at a similar price. I know Cody is much more expensive, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. And I feel like Alonso too. What is your kind of plan for Alonso, I suppose? Because I think he could maybe make way to improve the look of your team. But if you're kind of fixated on going for Son now, that's totally fair enough. I just think there might be a bit more upside going for some players who have better Game Week 26s, because some of the transfers that you're showing me now seem a little bit more effective in 27. So let's see. Plan for 26 is Fernandez to TC. That makes sense. And 20 to White Horse, that's totally fair. Reguilon to me, Johnson to White. Yep, fair enough. Jota. Oh, okay. Sorry, 27 is Jota to Son. All right. Yeah. Okay. I think if that's the plan, then that's totally fine. I do like that. No money in the bank. That's a weird one. And as I said, I think the money in the bank has to come from Alonso potentially. But whether you actually move away from Alonso is probably another question altogether. I think in the future, you might want to consider just taking King completely out of your team, especially if this Watford team doesn't really improve anytime soon. So that could be another way to kind of save you money, where you go for a 4.5 forward in the future. Someone like an Ida from Norwich could be the play, and you can find upgrades in the future. I think actually being able to trim down your budget is something that a lot of managers have struggled with in recent weeks. So I don't think it's necessarily super bad that you're a little bit inflexible there. It seems like you generally are quite happy to take hits, so not the worst move in the world. So yeah. Let's have a look at Ayrton. So he's now debating a -12. Ramsdale will cover this hit. Broja is the enabler, but want him for 27 anyways. And with Jota potentially being out, you can keep Foden. Yep, I agree with that. Son, interesting. So we've got Dennis. I mean, Watkins doesn't seem like a super interesting asset. So my first question, I suppose, would be, okay, let's actually type proper English. I would probably question who's going out for Broja. I think this is a decent opportunity as well. I guess in subsequent weeks he can move out of Gray. I would also question whether it's necessary to keep De Gea in the team as well. Those are kind of questions that I have. But I'm just quickly gonna check on YouTube for some comments. Sun means I wouldn't have to free hit this week, but I think Tierney gets more points. I agree. I think Tierney is the absolute... I think Tierney should be the best option this week when we look at kind of expected points, and hopefully Arsenal do keep at least one clean sheet. Parv says, hey Fran, so you already did Bruno and DCL to Salah and Broja, have Jota and Martinelli both. Do you go to Martinelli to Saka, or just hold, took a -8 already? Interesting. So you got Ramsdale and White. I mean, Parth, I kind of need to know who else you'd be playing instead. So if you can kind of show me your team on Twitter, I'd be happy to kind of respond to you, Parth, a little bit better, just because I need to know who's coming off the bench and things like that if Jota can't play. If we're still unsure about Weghorst's injury, who would you go for under 7 mil? Are we talking forwards, Henry, exclusively, or are we talking midfielders and defenders as well? The one thing I'd say with the team that we have right in front of us, I think, is that it's a super flexible and diverse team. So I think whenever you do plan to bench boost, it's going to look exceptional, maybe when Gray gets replaced. But there's almost too many good players here in different positions. I would rather trim down the budget a little bit, and that's kind of why I'm suggesting maybe go for a bit more of a fodder keeper, maybe even reduce Watkins into Broja instead. Gray can even be moved down to someone like an Anthony Gordon or a Ramsey. That could be interesting. I'll just look at message requests just for some kind of recent messages. So replacing Jota and Gray, you've got Salah this game week. Yep, totally understand. I think, so Saka at the minimum. So I'm thinking Saka at the minimum is interesting. We have Cancelo and Diaz, who are going to be good this week. Reguilon, who I'm not a huge fan of. I've already taken Reguilon out of my team. I've been really unimpressed. But you got Ramsdale at a great price. So you'll be playing Ramsdale, you'll be playing Cancelo probably, and Trent, and maybe Reguilon. So you got a back three there. Then you play Bowen, Salah, Saka, Rafinha. And then we'll think about another midfielder. and then you've got two forwards. So right now we kind of have a 3-4-2 structure at the very minimum. If we play Diaz, we would have a 4-4-2. And I would say, I think we'd be happy with that, right? If you played Diaz this week, potentially. I think you just go for the Saka move. I think you go for a Saka move and you triple captain and you chill. And you take Jota out of your team and you go for Saka. Reason why I say this is because this allows you to have 11 players next week. You can basically play Cancelo, Diaz, Reguilon, Dawson, Bowen, Rafinha, and then maybe replace Gray. And then you can have Dennis Watkins and Edouard in the subsequent week, which should be a playing 11, and maybe you don't have to free hit in 27. You can save your free hit later in the season, and then you can also bench boost very, very late. So if you bench boost in one of the double game weeks in the late 30s, I think that's a decent plan. For me, I wouldn't say you have to take many hits, because I would say Cancelo and Diaz are always premium options. So very much worth playing on a weekly basis. And yeah, I would be really happy with this team. I think you just, and even with Gray, right? Like, let's say if you move Gray into an Aston Villa player, someone like a Ramsey, that should actually free up a lot of budget in your teams, and you can maybe improve or even make further downgrades, right? Because you've got the potential going for Broja in the future. Let's say if Watkins is not very attractive, you can maybe take a hit next week instead, where I think your team would be a little bit under threat. It depends on the performances of Danny Ings, I would say, in 26 too, because it seems like Watkins might not start in 26. So I would maybe think about going for Broja and even Ramsey, so you can kind of cover the Aston Villa player there. Even maybe go for Coutinho if you want to stretch out and play kind of a 3-5-2 for the remainder of the season, and then kind of budget out of Watkins, because Watkins just hasn't looked very interesting. That's another opportunity there. And I think later on in the future, whenever you rack up some free transfers, you could definitely move out of De Gea too, who should free up some money in your team. And that might give you a strong bench boost in the future. Let's have a look at Will Wood's team. So thoughts on this -8, avoiding free hit next week. Salah for Jota, Broja for CR7, VVD for Davies. Second, interesting. So one of the first people that I've actually seen bring in Virgil van Dijk. And that might be interesting, because Virgil van Dijk might be more nailed than Robertson. And the thing is, Robertson is an absolute tank. So we have seen him play consecutively a lot of games, but I think Tsimikas has shown bright spots this season. I would arguably say that these two games that Liverpool have are rather easy. I think he does deserve the rest. So Tsimikas coming in is interesting, because I think Van Dijk could play both games, and you could argue he might be less rotation prone. You could also take the hit and go for the bigger hit and go for Saka and commit to free hit 27. So let's actually have a look at the team. Yeah, a -12 is a weird one, isn't it? Because you're almost crippling your team quite a bit, and then forcing yourself to play a chip because you've taken such a big hit. But anyways, let's have a look at the kind of bench order and things like that. So what I would say off the bat is I really like the Broja game versus Everton. I might even consider benching potentially maybe one of Foden and Mahrez for that. I don't know if you'd agree with my assessment. I might consider dropping Foden for Broja. I know it doesn't seem worth it, but that could be an option. Another thing too is, if we just go back to the transfers, I'm not sure if VVD for Davies is actually a really nice play. I would maybe scrap that play, and then I would actually not commit into 27 free hitting, because why not just go for Saka for Foden, skip the Virgil van Dijk move, and then you don't have to commit to free hit 27, and you take one less hit. I do like Salah for Jota, obviously. I think that's very logical. Yeah, I just feel like maybe triple Liverpool isn't absolutely necessary this week. I think we've seen, for example, Leeds being able to score versus Liverpool. It's not like Liverpool are 100% confirmed for clean sheets. So yeah, you could also bring in Virgin, and I agree. I'm just thinking, who's got the higher ceiling next week? Are we saying Saka has a higher ceiling next week, or are we saying Virgil? I might even say Tierney has a higher ceiling than Virgil van Dijk next week, just because Tierney is a little bit more interesting there. that could be an interesting play too if you want to keep Foden in your team, because honestly, I think if you keep three Man City players for the rest of the season, I think that's the correct play. I myself don't have three Man City players, and that's probably one of the biggest gaps in my team. I might actually find that I have, excuse me, space for Sterling or someone like Mahrez in my team. I agree with Davies. It seems like I would say Davies has a decent floor though, because there could be a potential getting a clean sheet versus Burnley, and he's not as rotation prone as Reguilon. My fear, for example, if you're a Reguilon owner, is that you miss the second game versus Burnley, and you play in a terrible game versus City. Whereas Davies seems like he might have one clean sheet. I would say in terms of ceilings though, Tierney might have a higher ceiling than Virgil van Dijk, just because of, I would say, Wolves and Brentford and their low threat from an attacking point of view, and then how much Tierney brings to the offensive table. Up to you though. I think both your plans are fine. I just think that even if, let's say, you force the Saka move, like, what's the worst case scenario for you? You have 4 Liverpool Arsenal players. You can maybe move away from one of the Liverpool players again, like in 27, and you don't even have to force a free hit potentially. That's how I feel personally. And when I look at your bench, I would love to play Broja next week. That's just how I feel. Yeah, but I think you're actually in a good situation where most of your team have good matches. You, as a Liverpool fan, yeah, completely understand. I mean, yeah, Verge is an absolute hero. You might bench Foden too. Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? The Mahrez cameo. He did play in the Champions League, but so did Foden. And I think the bench-wise, we've seen that, Sterling can play with Mahrez, and I think Grealish, of course, is the one who's kind of fallen down the pecking order for just a little bit. I wouldn't be too worried about, I guess, picking between Foden and Mahrez. I think Mahrez always has an upside where he can kind of cheese a goal through getting a penalty, as an example. Let's just quickly go back to YouTube very quickly. Okay, sorry. So, some additional comments. So Parth is actually suggesting that he's going to hold Jota, and I think that's fine, but I wouldn't hold him for a very long while. So if it seems like the injury situation is getting worse, I think he's an easy move in 27, especially since he blanks in 27 anyways, and it's guaranteed that he blanks in 27. So why not move Jota the next week if you don't want to move him this week? That's all I'm going to say to you there, Parth. And you can bring in Jota in the future. I have a lot of kind of, how do you say, like, cost saved up in Jota, but I'll think about that. Your SV is using his triple captain this game week. Yep, makes sense. Wildcard in 30 and free hit in 36. Yep, like those moves. You've got Gray Jota to be transferred out for a -8. You got Salah, Bone, Rafinha as adjustment options. I mean, I think it's just going to be as simple as maybe Saka and Cornet. Especially since you don't plan to free hit in 27. Why not go for someone who doubles in 27? In terms of Cornet, if you can actually stretch towards going for Son, that's an option too. I don't really know what your budget situation is. Gray can also be an easy downgrade into someone like Ramsey, but that would probably be another week. You could maybe go for Ramsey in a subsequent week, such as 27. Jota to Saka or Son -4. I would prefer going for Saka this week than Son. I don't think Son has a super high ceiling. What happened to Jota? He actually got injured. He got injured last night in the Champions League game. So he got injured in the first half, and he got subbed off in halftime because it seemed like the injury was quite poor. And I think he had an initial assessment today on his injury, and it doesn't seem very good. No worries, Parth. I mean, yeah, absolutely able to see your comments. VVD nailed for 180. I agree VVD is going to be nailed for 180. I do like him. Weak aerial teams, it's a fair point. I mean, to be honest, I actually went for Trent captaincy versus Everton because they were quite weak aerially versus set pieces at that point in time. I wouldn't take Cornet. I wouldn't take Coutinho out of my team, Pragyan, just because I think Coutinho has still very good game weeks and even a good single versus Watford. Till game week 30, would I prefer double Arsenal defense or double attack? I'd prefer Arsenal defense. Would you play Olise over Coutinho? Coutinho is Watford at home, where Olise has both fixtures away. You don't see Olise playing versus Chelsea. I actually do see Olise playing versus Chelsea. The reason why I'll say that is because Gallagher is not going to be playing versus Chelsea, Aman. So who do you think replaces Gallagher versus Chelsea, and how do you think Crystal Palace will set up? Is Firmino a good bet now? I think absolutely, yeah. I would say so, yes. I'll look at Big Boy Adama. So, Hey, Fran, I'm planning to not free. So we have looked at the initial points. But let's just. So he says Antonio to Broja. Or have I actually looked at your team before? Sorry, I might have missed it, actually. So you're planning to not free it in 27. You will wildcard in Gaming 28. Therefore, you're looking to maximize returns in 26 and 27. Minus 12. Okay. Can you do? Okay, let's see. So Antonio, Broja, Cornet, Kane, Van Dijk. Interesting. I just don't think this is a great week to go into Kane. That's my personal opinion. You already have Salah in your team. Broja is a nice move, I would say. I think Antonio has a nice game, so I'd rather go out of Watkins into Broja this week and kind of cut the Kane move off. Van Dijk, I'm happy with that move. Yeah, why not just go Van Dijk, Cornet, and Broja, and maybe even play. I think and maybe just play Coutinho, right? Because you'd play Cornet, you'd play Bowen, you'd play Broja, you'd play Coutinho, you'd play Dennis, you'd play Elise, Salah, Van Dijk, Alexander-Arnold, and Trent. I just feel like Kane's ceiling is really low, and I feel like the hits you're taking isn't worth it, and that's why I'm not a big fan of. And then you're gonna double up with Game Week 27 with Spurs. I just feel like you're kind of putting yourself into a trap, aren't you? Even though you're wildcarding. The trap being that you actually have two Spurs players as opposed to a trap in that your team is being deadlocked. I understand deadlocking your team, but I feel like even deadlocking your team, I'd rather deadlock with Son and Salah if that makes sense, as opposed to Kane and Salah. Kane and Son, sorry. Even though Kane is interesting versus Leeds. That's just kind of how I feel about it, just because I don't like Kane in 26. And even though Kane is interesting in 27, then, I mean, we can think about him for 27 instead. But yeah. I just think the hit you're taking in 26 is going to cap your ceiling in 26. And then maybe you have a nice little ceiling in 27, but, I mean, do we really, like, arguably, I'd say Dallo and Cash, both players who I'd say might not be able to keep their clean sheet there. It's a weird situation. Like, I'd rather you just transfer Salah out in the subsequent week for someone else. Maybe even like a City player, for example, because City play Everton. That for me is a high ceiling game compared to Kane. So you can go for someone like De Bruyne instead. Why not consider those sorts of options? For me, like going to 27, if you want to deadlock your team, I'd rather just go for triple Man City. That's just my opinion. Martinelli to Saka for another hit, or just play Broja. I'd probably just play Broja Parth, honestly. Please click on my name on Twitter. You hovered your mouse over it like 20 times. Sorry about that. Which one would that be? I'll try to answer everyone's questions immediately. So Antonio out for Broja, not really, but the Foster vs United game isn't ideal. You may do a -4 for Jota and Diaz out for Kilman and Son. Seems safe though. So for me, I just feel like Son's ceiling isn't too high. I also think Diaz is a great pick. I just think that you can take less hits in 26. The same kind of sentiment there. But maybe obviously, 27 is a consideration there. I just think that Triple City, like, I'm not a huge fan of going out of City players in the next few weeks. They just seem so solid on singles. Let's start from the bottom. So Jota and Fernandez out for Salah and Saka -4. Yep, I like those moves. So yep, that's fine. So you triple captain Salah. Interesting that you have Dennis. I think the moves you've proposed are fine. Generally, I think they're fine. I mean, yeah, you probably just make a decision between Dennis and King and kind of just, call it a day there. All right, CM Punk, let's go. Let's see. So we have Robertson, Odegaard, and Lacazette in. So we're deadlocking ourselves, definitely free hitting in 27, I imagine. I prefer the second move because the reason why I say this is because Lacazette for me seems like a player I wouldn't want to keep necessarily for the rest of the season. He also costs a lot more money. Ramsdale is a keeper I would love to end the season with, so he's a lock. Robertson is someone I'd be quite happy to end the season with too, so he's a lock. And then between Saka and Odegaard, I think Saka is a more permanent fixture in the team than Odegaard. And then on top of that, for me, he actually covers the Arsenal attack very well without having to go, triple Arsenal from an attacking point of view. And I think what we've seen recently is that Arsenal have probably downtrended on attack and probably increased in terms of their attacking trends, or actually stayed relatively level with their very good performances. So I'd rather you go for Ramsdale, and I prefer option 2. Let's go to SL Benfica. So want to try get Salah in with one transfer and 3.8 mil in the bank. Any other way except removing KDB? Any way to remove Jota and get Salah in with a -4? Or should I just get KDB out and bring Salah? Yeah, fair enough. I think if you take Jota out, I mean, you got 3.8 mil in the bank. How much is... So I kind of need to know how much your Jota is worth, unfortunately. But the way your team is set up, I think, unfortunately, you probably have to... Can we downgrade Jorginho into Ramsey, maybe? I would probably just maybe downgrade Jorginho into a 4.5, 4.8 player. And then if you have enough money, I'm not sure how much money you've saved into Jota. If you got Jota late or Jota early, that impacts how much money you have stored in terms of your Jota value. And then Salah's 13 million, so he's around 4.5 away. So you just needed that 0.7. I think you just take Jorginho out of your team, and I think you're in a good spot. All right, let's have a look at Ashdeep Singh's team. So, hey, Fran, plan is to bench boost this game week and then wildcard the next game week. Yeah, a lot of people seemingly like to wildcard the next game week. Looking to triple up on Liverpool and Arsenal assets. Varane to Kieran Tierney is a sure move, looking for Jota and Watkins replacement. Yeah, fair enough. Broja, I think, is an option. So, I would say Son as a Jota replacement is interesting. Obviously, I'm not sure if I would love to double up with Lucas Moura, but I think Son is a nice little pick here, and it kind of avoids you from maybe suffering too much in 27 if you don't want a free hit in 27. So that's kind of my opinion there. You don't necessarily have to go for both this game week, I would say. I'm not sure what your price situation is. Wildcard game week 27. So you just mean like you want to play it as explosively as possible. Sorry, I thought you were actually wildcard on 28. But are you? Do you definitely want to play? Interesting. You can play mini free hit. Yeah, I see what you mean. Do you really want to wildcard on 27 though? The reason why I say that is because it makes a lot of sense to actually own Arsenal assets for the end of the season. And if you're kind of sidestepping the Arsenal assets on your 27 wild card, unless you, let's say, replace Foster with Ramsdale and then suddenly kind of rack up a few Liverpool or Arsenal players on your bench and then playing 11, I just feel like the wild card 27 is a weird option. Because it kind of forces you to, like, the free hit this week doesn't seem that high of a ceiling because everyone is kind of going for similar players. Like everyone is going to go for hits to go for Tierney or Saka and things like that. So that's kind of my slight worry because not many people's doubles are very good. Ayrton. So I think game week 27 without Son and a free hit. I mean, I think your captain could be a City player. Nothing wrong with the transfers you've made though. Like I think you can still go for Son and Kilman up that. Just going, no need to make any more transfers. Gunnar, so 2 free transfers are willing to take a hit. What are you thinking, Fran? So probably okay. So I think when I'm looking at this team here, I'm not a huge fan of Reguilon. I think if you're free hitting, I also need to know if you're free hitting in 27. Those are the questions I would ask for anyone, really. Jerome, hey Fran, you got any suggestions for this week? The Jota injury hurt my plans. I'm going to quickly check your bench. Honestly, I would say just play Davies. I think if you're not free hitting in 27, I think you just play Davies. It's unfortunate, but yeah. I mean, I think that's the situation. This is your current team. This is the roadmap since you don't want a free hit in 27. Yeah, fair enough. Could you skip Foster to Ramsdale, or do you think it'll be worth it? I think it's worth it, but I think you don't want to think about Ramsdale as a short-term explosive asset. I think just over the course of the season, he's like the best keeper to actually round off the season. Because if you look at Ramsdale on a per-game basis, he really does vastly outscore keepers, unless you actually have Sa, who's relatively close, but still behind Ramsdale. I think Ramsdale will pay off in the long term, even if it's a hit. So one of the things I would say, Deep, is that you actually have a lot of players who, even though they aren't very interesting now, I think they would be interesting in Game Week 27. And that's why I would suggest maybe pushing your wildcard back to at least something like 28. Because the way I see it, Liverpool and Arsenal miss out. And I can't see a team going towards the end of the season, especially if you look at the fixtures that Arsenal have. Like, if you look at the fixtures that Arsenal have after 27, we're talking 28, 29. I mean, like, all the way up until the end of the season, relatively green games. And yes, of course, tough games will be rescheduled with Tottenham, Chelsea, and Liverpool, but those will be doubles, right? So the ceiling is still quite high. They play in 30 for sure. Most of the single game weeks are very good for Arsenal. Going without Arsenal in 27 is a weird one. And then going without Liverpool players, I mean, I doubt you'll do that actually, but you do want to have as many Liverpool players as possible. I think it's the same logic as owning City players as well this season. You probably want to have 3 City players because of how good they are as a team. So I feel like 27 is a weird wild card. What do I think about this? Yeah, I mean, those are simple, nice moves, and I really like them. So you say you only have 10 players. What do you mean you'll only have 10 players? You can just take one of the players out, right? If you're not interested in, if you want to have a playing 11, 27. You could, for example, even transfer Robertson into a City player potentially. But I mean, I love those transfers for 26. So I think if you're free hitting in 27, then you can dead end yourself a little bit more. I think if you're not free hitting in 27, the simple answer is to stack Arsenal players. If you are free hitting in 27, sorry, if you're not free hitting, my bad. I would say a stable team is going for something like Cody. A third Liverpool player makes a lot of sense too. As far as other players, I mean, Firmino's a great option for forwards. I just tend to think that obviously not many people like spending money on forwards, so because it does feel like a little bit of a waste of money this season. But I think Firmino's an interesting option. I wouldn't say he's a fantastic one, but yeah, I think you dead end yourself with Arsenal players if you are free hitting. If you're not free hitting, I'd probably go for Ramsdale because Ramsdale is someone you can kind of avoid, right? Because everyone has an alternate keeper this season. So Ramsdale's not really, he doesn't pose a problem for a free hitter, for a non-free hitter, sorry. And then you can go for maybe one Arsenal player, either Tierney or Saka, make a decision there, and maybe even just kind of keep Jota on your bench and play. And it's a good opportunity that allows us to play Cancelo. I mean, let's not fool ourselves. Cancelo is amazing, even in good games, and we've seen that the course of this year. Um, Thank you. I just think that for Arsenal, Liverpool players just isn't enough. Most of the people, most people have three or at least 4 or 5 Arsenal players. Like if you look at my team now, I'm not free hitting in 27, and I already have 4 Arsenal players at the minimum. Some people who are free hitting in 27 will have 5, 6 players in their team in terms of Arsenal, Liverpool combined, and they all have great runs towards the end. So kind of capping yourself at 4 just so you can wildcard at 27 doesn't seem that worthwhile. Especially when you're probably going to be forced to go for someone like a Son. But it's up to you, really. I think if you do plan on wildcarding in 27, it still allows you to go for 3 City players. You probably still can go for potentially a double of Liverpool and a double of Arsenal there. So it's up to you. But I think it also kind of caps your 27, unfortunately. But if that's your plan and you're kind of quite confident in it, then I'd go for that. All I would say is that some of these players like Reguilon and Lucas Moura might be a little bit more interesting in 27, and therefore I can see your team maybe benefiting from a later wild card. It is a bit tough though. I know Watkins isn't appealing. I know Dennis isn't appealing, or at least a double up of Watford right now past this game week. So I know you want to kind of at least take out Lucas Moura, Reguilon, Dennis, King, Watkins. That's 5 players I can name for now, and then maybe even change around your keepers. So that's around 6 or 7 transfers. I think as long as if you have the right bench in order, you can keep Salah in your team. Maybe you take Jota out. As I said, go for double Liverpool. So Trent, Salah on the bench. Go for players like Broya. Who else is interesting? Maybe gamble on a Weghorst for a short-term option in 27 if you want to do that, and then kind of go deep into City players. I think that's also a possibility. Jerome, so you're going to do DCL and Bachmann to Pope and Weghorst, but now you want to do a minus 12 that looks like this. Sounds silly, doesn't it? I think it's not silly at all, but tripling up on Burnley, like, do we really want to do that for a minus 12? That's all I'm gonna say. We are tripling up on Burnley. You might even want to, like, I mean, why not even just wait and see what happens with the Weghorst situation? Or maybe actually you need the money from Weghorst from the DCL downgrade, right? Yeah, okay, I kind of understand that. Who is your sub keeper at the end? I mean, you've got okay, Bachmann, unfortunately, yeah, who's not playing. Because what I'm thinking is that you are sort of dead ending yourself a little bit, right? With going for De Gea and Pope. That kind of puts a lot of money in your team into keepers, as opposed to people who have a combination of, let's say, someone like Foster and Ramsdale potentially. So they save a bit more money than you for the rest of their team to actually improve week on week. And then another thing too is, do we need 2 Burnley attackers? Maybe why not just go for 1, and then if they looked interesting in double game week 26, then you can go for another one and get double game week 27 without taking hits. Does that kind of make sense? I know you do have 4 kind of outfield like Liverpool and Arsenal options, and maybe that's why you want to save yourself the ability to move away from them in 27. But it's a weird one, I think. I just feel like the ceiling's quite low if you're going to take such a big hit. Doesn't matter too much, wildcard 28. Fair play. Yeah, okay. If you're going for that sort of gamble, and you think that I just think that Burnley has a low ceiling. That's just my only concern. But otherwise, it's not a bad option. I mean, wildcarding is nice because you kind of you can get away from putting all the money you have in the forwards and the keepers. Yeah, fair enough. If you're doing that, then I mean, it'll be interesting following someone who has triple Burnley, and that can hit a big rise for you. But yeah, the ceiling is something to think about. Triple captain or bench boost opinions. I mean, I'm sorry. I think for me, it's a triple captain. Ooh, your bench boost is actually really nice though. I might actually. I'd be happy to bench boost. Sorry, yeah, I'd be happy to bench boost. Hey, Fran, thoughts on my current team? I'm tempted to either free hit or wildcard. You would like to bring in Cornet, Son, Semedo, Robbo, Ramsdale for Jota, Bruno, Cucurella, Cash, and Ramsdale. Interesting. Okay, so that's a lot of transfers. Okay, so my main concern is, so I mean, let's talk about the free hit versus wildcard first. So I think free hitting is interesting for one reason. It kind of allows you to deal with the blank in 27 because you only have triple Liverpool Arsenal right now, and all the players that you currently have in your team would be playing in 27, and then you can anyways wildcard later in 28 or 30, something like that. The one thing that I would say is a bit concerning is that I actually think your team is very, very good right now as it stands for 26. So I don't really see the reason to go for a free hit or a wild card. That's what I would say. I would just move out of Jota this week. Maybe move out of Cash. I'd rather you free hit the next week. And I'd rather you kind of gamble on Arsenal players. So we've seen Cash doesn't look interesting. De Gea seems to be downtrending, so I would rather you take hits on Arsenal players such as Ramsdale and Tierney, those kind of options, and then maybe play Broja, and play Broja this week, and then kind of free hit in 27 instead. The -8, are we talking Tierney playing Broja and then playing Ramsdale? Is that the -8 we're thinking about together, or am I a little off base here? Because I would do what I've just mentioned. You could also go for Cody as well. I don't think Semedo's a great option. Sorry. So if you wanted another defender and you don't want to play Broja and you wanted to go for a -8, then yeah, I mean you could go for Cody as well. Cornet, I would say. I mean, I'd probably skip on it. I think Broja has a good enough single where, for me, Broja matches a -4. So I think you always have to look at your bench and say, like, does this player have a good game? And I think Broja has a good game. Even Cucurella arguably has a better game than Cash, just because I think Aston Villa's defense has looked pretty poor lately. Brighton still look relatively good. You don't think you have enough doublers for this week? I mean, you've got Davies, Tierney. I think you've got plenty of doublers for this week. I think the main thing, Jerome, is that you're thinking about a lot of players who have Edouard and Dennis. But let's be honest, like what really is the ceiling of Dennis and Edouard? It's not that high. So I think I don't think you should be worried. I think you have the key doubles here, and also some key differential doubles. But I think you could maybe skip one of the Burnley players. That's all I'll say. FPL Primo, AP. Yeah, I mean, I would say I think a -4. I would say a move towards the Ramsdale and Tierney as an option is good, so that you can just play Broja alongside. And I would actually be happy to play Fernandez, sorry, in the single. Zodiac, Katie, what would I do with this team? 0.6 in the bank, triple captain, Salah, no free hit, consider wildcard 28. Fair enough. Okay, fine, let's go. Right, okay, so we have Salah in. Okay, not the strongest bench. Fine. So we have some problems with Sissoko. We have Ronaldo, who's holding a lot of money in our team. I mean, if you're not free hitting, well, why not go for Broja and Son? So you replace Jota, and then you get. It's tough though. I think then you have to probably take another hit as well. But you have 2 free transfers, so that's fine. So we can actually then take a -4 and then go for Tierney maybe, or even a replacement for Gray. So I would say Saka, Tierney. Up to you who you want to bring in. Obviously, I think either Livramento and Soufal can leave. And then Broja plus Son seems interesting. All right, let's go back to YouTube chat for a quick second and see what's going on. I'm doing good today, Zodiac. I hope you're doing good. Cornero, Coutinho. Yeah, I think Coutinho makes sense. If you're bringing in someone this week, I think you can have a look at Cornet for the next 2 weeks. Nothing wrong with that. Firmino's a good bet for sure. Rory, I'll have a look at your chat for now. Sorry about that. I did miss that. I'm good, Andrew. How are you? I am triple captaining. I'd rather triple captain this week for sure. You can send me your team on. Yep, Zodiac. I think I have just taken a look at it. Yeah, I'll have a look at my message requests. All right, I'm gonna try blow through them a little bit quickly because the messages have piled up for a bit, and I've been a bit slow, just brainstorming a little bit too much. All right, fine. So what do we think? So yeah, triple captain this week. Agree. Just want to see who your bench is first. It's a nice bench. It's a nice bench. Yeah, probably still a triple captain though. Lacazette's a very good differential. I like that. I'd play Cody over Laporte. Yeah, I'd play Cody over Laporte. And I think you keep the team the way it is. I think that's quite a simple move. Let's have a look at Omar's request. BB or TC. I think TC because Reguilon's ceiling seems a bit low. He might miss the game versus Burnley. You never know what's going to happen with the. He could play the Man City game and then he could miss out on the Burnley game. Antonio, some pretty poor form. Newcastle defense also improved quite a bit. Cash, Aston Villa defense a bit questionable. However, I do like Sanchez. I just think that obviously triple captain Salah. I mean, we don't really know when's the next time to have such a good triple captain. Whereas I think if your team remains relatively constant, you're going to have a good bench boost the next time we have a big double game week anyways. And especially since Reguilon's ceiling is a bit low, I'm not the biggest fan of a bench boost this week for you. I think you keep it simple and you triple captain. Who is Saya in for reg out? Oh, you mean Sice, right? Yeah, you could do that, but I do actually like the team that you're playing. I guess you could put Cancelo on the bench if you really want to bring in Sice. I'd still go Cody just to save cash, though, personally. Let's look at Brandon's team. Team as it stands. Yep, so Broja is a nice option that you're not playing currently. Obviously, I'd probably play Broja over Rudiger. The rest of the team actually looks really strong, though. Jota and Reguilon out for Tierney and Saka for -4. Yep, love those moves. So if you play Tierney and Saka, who are you thinking of dropping? Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I mean, Antonio doesn't look that interesting, but I would also say that Watkins doesn't look particularly interesting either. Um, yeah, but in terms of just because I feel like Antonio is probably more likely to start than Watkins is, so that's what I would say. Let's have a look at Adam. This is how it looks like. Gameweek 27, still have one free transfer, and you're still considering Salah as a triple captain, which you do, my friend. Interesting, interesting. I'd say Ramsdale in is an interesting one because it gives you a good keeper for the rest of the season. We do have to downsize someone. Ronaldo is holding quite a bit of money of our team. Why not? I mean, I do kind of like Ronaldo's single. I think he's also proven himself to be worth starting every game. I think he's shown that to the manager. Ronaldo's a little bit of a hidden kind of gem, I would say. I would say Ramsdale in is nice because he has a double, which Sanchez doesn't have, and the ceiling is quite good. What do you mean? You'd have to drop... Oh, sorry, you are triple Arsenal, my bad. Fair play. Yeah, I guess we can't go for Ramsdale. Then I would say Tony out for Broja in still seems interesting. But that doesn't get us Son, though, does it? I think we probably have to make a decision about Ronaldo here when I'm looking at your team. Because Ronaldo is kind of the option who's stopping you from upgrading Jota. And at the same time, are there any other interesting options? You could also downgrade Jota, to be fair. I mean, Cornet. Just because you have Saka and Smith Rowe already, you could go for Cornet. Thank you, thank you. A lot of fans from India, so thank you guys so much. Right, so you still have Webster and Mope. Interesting. Should you free hit or wild card? I actually think wildcarding this week is interesting for you because you can still captain Salah. You've kind of dead-ended your team a little bit. Why not wildcard into kind of Liverpool and Arsenal players and then just free hit in the next week? I think if you wildcard into Arsenal players, unfortunately you missed out on triple captain Salah, but that's fine, right? Because you can actually make improvements on Watkins already and take Mope out of your team, downsize the forward positions, improve your defense, which needs a lot of work, I would say, because Webster and Dallo aren't going to be that appetizing as options, and maybe even think about changing Rudiger for now. You can also quickly change your keeper, so you have a double with Ramsdale. Probably keep Foster in your team. You can have Saka, the space for Saka in your team, so you can replace Jota with Saka. Even go for Robertson as well, and then you can maybe, I would say, for example, change Rudiger into Robertson. That kind of money would come from downgrading the forwards. So, for example, someone like Watkins can go into Broja this week, and I think you play around that. Got the worst benching headache you've had this season. I can, oh man, oh, that's a tough benching headache. I would play Cancelo over Reguilon, genuinely. And then I'd probably also think about Broja over Laporte. And then I mean Ramsey's an interesting one because Ramsey's so explosive. But he does quite often get some blanks. This Watford team is gonna play quite compact. I'd be more tempted to actually play Reguilon and Cancelo and then just put Ramsey. I'd probably actually put Broja first bench and maybe just play Reguilon over Ramsey. It's a tough benching headache though. Like I'm having a headache looking at this team. I just feel like I would say the only thing I would have like clarity on is I really do think Cancelo is better than Reguilon, even single versus double. That's just my opinion. And then you can make a decision. I would say it's not a huge decision, but I would say Ramsey versus Broja is another question mark for you, and also even versus Reguilon. Maybe Reguilon's more interesting. I think you swap Cancelo and Ramsey around at the very least, if you want to do that way. Right, Finlay. Would I play Elise over Laporte? I would, just because Gallagher seems to be missing that game, and then you have the option of at least another game versus Watford potentially. Um, it's a wild card draft, interesting. So I like the keepers in the wild card draft. Oh, sorry, you have done that. You literally did what I was thinking immediately. So I like the final team you actually came up with. Um, so one thing, if you don't want to play Elise, I like the wild card though. It does kind of lock you into a four at the back structure. Nothing wrong with that. It just probably means you're going to play a consistent 4-4-2 every week, which I'd be happy to play, I guess, Edouard and Broja. But maybe you'd like a little bit more flexibility if maybe between like either 5 midfielders or you know, 2 forwards or 3 forwards. So maybe have to think about that Elise position because it seems like you're not certain of Elise. And I think between Elise and Edouard, they're both not that nailed. So that's my kind of main concern between those two players. Sticking with the plan of Wildcard 27 with bench Ramsdale. Views on bench boost game. We can make up to 3 transfers. Okay. If we're going to go... Alright, Tierney in. Bench boost. I think, yeah, you want to get Lucas Moura out because I just don't see his potential being very good. I think Cornet is interesting, but we could have a lot more money after we swap Watkins out. Because I'm thinking that Watkins might not start the game, so you might look at Broja, and that's why I would suggest Broja. Or you could go for Weghorst Cornet, and Cornet if you just want the doubles, if Weghorst seems fine. Should quickly go back to YouTube chat. Reguilon was not spotted in Tottenham training today. Perfect, because he's not in my team. So if you have a look at my team, you wouldn't spot him either. Great. Reading morning cheat sheet and a strategy sheet. Thanks, Leanne. It's awesome that you guys are watching my content. I really appreciate the support and everything. You send Ramsdale plus Trent. So Brandon, Ramsdale plus Trent, White, Cancelo, Rudiger, Rafinha, bench, Salah, triple captain, Son, King, Weghorst. Thoughts? Yeah, looks like a good team. Not a huge fan of Rudiger, but that's fair enough. I'll have a look at more of my message requests in a second. I think you might just be on my message requests, Brian, so I'll have a look at that in a bit. Aman Khan says best premiums other than Liverpool for the next 2. I mean, I would say simply just going to the City premiums. I think a lot of people are looking at players like Son, looking at players like Kane, but in reality, I think the City players are much more tried and trusted. Yeah, sorry guys, there's just a lot of comments, so it's been a bit tough. I'm just trying to see the most recent ones that I've missed. I might have missed Rory, so I'll start with Rory because he did message a while ago. -4 for Jota to Saka. So, okay, if we play -4 for Jota to Saka, how do we play this team? So we play Ramsdale for sure. You play Trent, you play Cancelo, you play Dean, maybe, or you play Dallo. You didn't play Rafinha, Bowen, Salah, Saka. Fine, that's 4 players at least. And then you play King and Weghorst, so that's 2. So we have a 3-4-2. We need kind of two more players in our team. Sorry, 1 more player. And I guess you maybe play between Antonio and... I think you can go for an Arsenal defender, but it seems like this person's trying to avoid a free hit in 27. Yeah, okay, I can see you're avoiding the free hit. Fine. Look, I think you might be able to chance Antonio. It doesn't seem super high ceiling, but I'd rather maybe just go for a double of a Wolves player instead and just go for a Wolves defender. I think it kind of fills in the gaps in your team. Also, maybe helps you with game week 30. So that's probably what I think. Let's go to Rono's question, Brian. Hi, Fran. Do I play Cancelo and Laporte for Reguilon and Jota, or take a -4 for Jota to Son? And would it be stupid not to? I'm not going to say. I'm never going to call someone stupid for not doing something. I didn't captain Salah in a week when they played Everton, and I got absolutely destroyed. So arguably, I'm stupid. But here it is. I would say no. I would say it's not stupid. I would still love to triple captain Salah. That's my honest opinion. As far as your actual team. So I'm not a huge fan of Lucas Moura when I'm looking at the team, and not a huge fan of Reguilon. So I would say Reguilon to Tierney is nice here. Depends, I guess. Are you... First question to everyone this week is going to be, are you free hitting in 27? Because that tells me what your strategy is, and that tells me how I can help. If you are free hitting in 27, I'd probably say definitely go for Tierney and just replace Reguilon with him. I would say also looking at your team, Cancelo is very interesting. So I wouldn't be too tempted to take Jota out of my team. You could maybe keep Jota on the bench and then just play Cancelo instead. I think that's a simple option for you, and you don't have to take too many hits. And then you can maybe think about Son in the future, right? Another thing too to mention is Lucas Moura seems like a pretty poor option, but he still has a double, and unfortunately there's just not much depth in the Spurs team. So maybe he can actually feature at least one of the games. I just think that he's maybe another player that you want to think about transferring out, potentially for someone like a Cornet. You haven't played plans for 27. So I would think about your plans for 27, because I think Reguilon can be replaced for Tierney. And I would always say that looking at your team here, that Jota isn't necessarily a problem, but I think you can definitely think about Cancelo. And actually playing him, and just going back to Son, I would say I don't think his ceiling is super high just because of the City game, and then also simply the kind of poor form of Spurs overall. Jose Gamer. So, hey Fran, I'm thinking about going from Jota, Antonio, and Cucurella to Salah, Weghorst, and Robertson for a -4. You're not sure whether you could bring in Robertson. I could bring in White instead and afford to do Foden. I think because you've got Foster, I think you can maybe sidestep the keeper transfer. I would be very tempted to go De Gea to Ramsdale in 28. So you could kind of wait for that transfer, I would say, because you kind of have the Foster double. As far as Robertson, I don't think he's a huge priority. I'd probably say focus around Salah, obviously, who you've brought in. Maybe you can just go for Tierney instead of Robertson, because I actually like Tierney as much as Robertson this week. Yeah, and I think maybe you can even avoid the hit, right? Or not the hit, but just like the additional hit if you want to go for Son. If you must. I don't think Son is necessary this week though. That's what I would say. Because I kind of prefer Son and Broja in the subsequent week for a hit. That's a nice little pairing too that you can go for. And the nice thing too about not going for Robertson is it doesn't kind of lock you into playing a back four for the rest of the season, especially since you actually seem to have a lot of good attackers and good forwards that you might want to play on a weekly basis. I prefer double City defense, personally. Thoughts on having Jimenez, Firmino, and Edouard? I would say I think it's a lovely forward line, but I am worried about spending that much money in the forwards. Personally, for me, as I said, I'm not hugely into going too deeply into the forwards from a financial perspective. When we look at our team, I'm a little bit more interested in going for. I mean, Lacazette is a good option too, but I understand some players have kind of had Ronaldo and Kane in their team and those kind of options, and they have that kind of money to spare in the forward positions. But still good forwards for this week. I would say. The ceiling, I would say, for Jimenez and Edouard probably isn't super high. Firmino is a very interesting and lovely option, though. I'm not gonna say the name. Hi, friend. Any advice would be much appreciated. All chips left and one free transfer this week as it stands. No idea going forward, to be honest. Yeah. understand. So I would say whenever I look at teams with Cancelo, I think he's always an option to go for. Um, okay, if you have all chips left, I would say just yeah, Martinelli into Saka and Dawson to Tierney are interesting for me. Reason being, you can play I would prefer Cancelo over Cucurella. Um, that's my opinion. So if we play a back three, right? So we play Tierney, we play Trent, you play Cucurella, then you play Olise, Salah triple captain, or captain if you want to do that, and then Bowen, and then you play Saka. You have Jota, who maybe falls into your bench. He could be replaced in the next week, and you can think about transfers then. And then you play Ronaldo, who has a great single versus Leeds, and then you have Dennis, who has, I wouldn't say the highest. I mean, and actually, you could maybe put Antonio on bench. Yeah, and I would actually probably do that. I'd put Antonio on my bench, and then do that. Another option you can go for as well. I think that those are your plays. Shabadaba Duba. Hi, Fran. Any suggestions for the team? Should you play Whitehorse over Ramsey, Fernandes, or Bowen? I mean, definitely not over Fernandes, and definitely not over Bowen. I think that's a simple answer for me. My top differentials. I mean, I don't know if Tierney's going to be a differential at the end of this week. I just think are there many differentials this week? It's a tough question because I just think that doubles aren't great. Maybe Laka, Mane. So like, unfortunately, it just has to go back to either an Arsenal or Liverpool player, which would be Lacazette, Mane, Firmino. Those would be my top differentials because I don't like the double that Spurs have. I don't like the double that Crystal Palace have. I definitely don't like the double that Leeds have. And Wolves, I mean, are they really capable of scoring goals? I mean, not really. Their defense is great though, so worth considering. And unfortunately, that kind of restricts the amount of differentials we have. We kind of just have to pick outside shouts from teams that are well invested into. Yeah, I think honestly every team not named Arsenal and Liverpool and Wolves defenders are a trap. I think Burnley is almost a half trap. Like really, I think Brighton and Spurs are still going to defend quite well versus Burnley, and unfortunately, this Burnley side just hasn't been able to, or capable of scoring a multitude of goals. So even though I see potentially a return for Weghorst or Cornet, I don't see back-to-back returns. So I feel like I think they're not necessarily a huge trap, but you could also invest into Burnley defender. Burnley GK defender, I think is actually quite an interesting differential. I wouldn't say they're traps. I would say the double up of Cornet and Weghorst seems like a trap, but I think you can still go for one of them. I think you either invest into one Burnley player, and I think that's already a bit of a reach. What about minus Jota plus Son, minus Ronaldo plus don't know who Firmino Maney? I think Lacazette is nice, just because Lacazette is nice because he has a more permanent role in the team. Thank you so much, Steve. I actually want to show you something. So I mean, I know you're at a rank you probably want to climb out of, but I had a really bad run this season. Like look how bad. So I went from 2K here and I dropped all the way to 106K. And it's been a slow climb, like week on week back, and I'm trying to make my way a little bit closer back to the top kind of 3K in the world ish, hopefully, and it's a slow climb, but there's highs and lows in the season, especially, and what's nice about the season too is when you look at I mean, let's just go to the EPL table for a second, right? There are so many teams that have random doubles that will be rescheduled, and if you pick the right players in the right weeks and you make some calculated moves, you can really push on and actually make a huge difference to your team. This year, for example, we had, even if you look at the kind of top overall ranks, someone like Gangsters Allardyce had such a good run to start the season. I mean, he was first for so many weeks in a row. You know, and within one kind of double game week, he's fallen quite far away from the rest of the pack, and this is, I mean, look at him. He was only really top 3 and kind of hand holding that spot from game week 9 to 23, and then suddenly, you know, you have these doubles that have huge impacts, and he struggles, right? And he's falling out. So a lot of things can happen. That's simply because he just went for Salah, you know, in a week where everyone captained Bruno, arguably everyone. I imagine everyone in the top ranks did, at least. But things can change a lot this season, especially with the amount of doubles, with the amount of variance you have, with the kind of asymmetric kind of run of games. You know, everything is possible. Start Cancelo or Antonio, definitely Cancelo for me, my friend. But you recommend Son to me, to the guy you said not necessary. I would recommend Son to people. It depends on your team situation always. I think I probably would have recommended Son to you because you might have Saka in your team. So it really depends on situations. And I think I might not have recommended Son on this week, but rather in the subsequent one. It also depends whether you actually have space for Son in your team too. Can't quite exactly remember your team right now, Zodiac, but everything's conditional, right? Firmino versus Lacazette is 3 Liverpool players. I don't think 3 Liverpool players is a must. There's also a strong possibility because of the Champions League that there is going to be rotation with Liverpool. Can you play free hit and triple captain? No, you can't. I'm sorry, Sid. FYI. Did I miss something? Sorry. Or mispronounce something? Zaha or Saka for Jota? I would probably say Saka. There will be a deadline stream tomorrow. Is the deadline tomorrow? I thought the deadline was on Saturday. Am I going crazy? There'll be a deadline stream on Saturday. Not necessarily tomorrow, because I don't think tomorrow's the deadline. Let's go back to your team, Zodiac, since you did low key call me out. I think it's, yeah, I think it depends on, yeah, because you don't want Arsenal players since you're not going for a free hit, right? Sun versus Leeds, I'd say Sun. Have a look at the price trends as well. So Bowen's rising, Salah's rising, Saka's rising. I'm not that interested in Saka now. I think I can still get him a little bit later. Cody and Robertson rising is interesting. Ramsdale, yep, makes sense. A lot of people investing into Gordon because he's done so well lately, and that's totally fair enough. Reguilon kind of going out of people's teams. Jota as well, about to hit a price fall. I imagine a lot of people are just going for a simple transfer, Jota to Saka. I mean, I'm happy to take the price fall in Jota's price because I got him at 8.0, so it doesn't really hurt me if he falls to 8.4. So none of the price falls will really hurt myself. I will be missing out on the Saka price rise, but at the end of the day, not a huge deal, especially if I plan on going for maybe Son or even Sterling the next week, because my plan kind of is, if I go for Sterling, you know, I can still go for someone like a Broya here. Then there's still a lot of money to play around with the team. For example, like Mount is going to be another option to think about in the future. So I kind of have the money to move out of Rafinha and go into Mount, who I'd be quite happy to own. Maybe he misses game week 30, unfortunately. But Mount has an exceptional run towards the end of the year. And it also could be a reinvestment into, I don't know, something like a back four where maybe I go for someone like a James too. If I don't go for that kind of Rafinha move. Obviously, a little bit of money needs to be spared. Probably someone like Dennis or Edouard has to make way eventually too, because I mean, they just don't seem like that interesting as options. Going for Ida could be possible, just to squeeze a little bit of money around the team. Go deeper into Chelsea players as we enter the end of the season. This doesn't look like a half bad team to kind of rock towards the end of the year. Not too crazy, but very, very shortly, you know, we will have these Chelsea players back in our teams. What's my rank at the moment? 64k. Oh, sorry. I'll just show it to you guys. Points. 65k. Sorry, my apologies. Played a terrible bench boost because I was a little wasted last week, so I did randomly just play it off the cuff, and the 000. That was pretty hard to stomach. Yeah, I have decided my Gameweek 26 transfers. So the transfers are just Salah, Tierney, and Ramsdale, who I brought in yesterday after the game's UCL, because I plan on keeping Jota on my bench really, and seeing what the situation for him is. But it's probably just going to be Jota out, as I say, moving Antonio out as well, just going for Broja and Son/Sterling. Yeah, completely understand not going for Spurs, and I completely understand also Reguilon on bench. That's, I mean, someone I took out of my team personally. You don't think it's bad to transfer in single gaming players for 26? I would say not necessarily. It depends, though, of course. Like I think for your team, as I said, like you can simply just go for Arsenal players, but because you've decided to go for a non-free hit in 27, I mean, another option you have is maybe, ooh, actually Cody is interesting for your team too. You could go for a double game week player there, and then you can even take Antonio out of your team, and maybe even Sissoko. Yeah, exactly. Like if you go for Saka, replace Jota, you can do that, and then you can also just play Cody, right? But yeah, those are my transfers now, and I think that's it for me in terms of the live stream, guys. It was lovely having you guys. It's been 1 hour and 30 minutes. Thank you guys so much. I'll probably just actually respond to this chat lastly. I was thinking Gallagher to Saka before Jota news, now unsure. Would like to bin DCL and a mid for Broja plus Son next week. I mean, Gallagher missing a game and Jota potentially also missing one of the games too. I think it doesn't matter who you transfer out this week, especially if your plan is to go into Son, right? Because effectively you'd be bringing in Saka and Son into your team. Or was your plan actually to not go for a free hit, right? Oh, I guess that might be what you're wondering about. In that case, I guess you move Jota out of your team because he's a little bit more expensive, and he's about to hit a price fall. So maybe you can make the move around that. Oh, sorry, I think last message here. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, going for Burnley players, going for Semedo's interesting. I mean, Semedo's going to be a bit of a differential because everyone's going for Cody, so I can understand that, especially if you go to Wildcard soon. Good luck. All right, guys. Lovely having you guys on the stream. I hope you guys take care, and I'll see you guys also. I will be posting a team selection video probably tomorrow morning, so my time at least. So that's going to come out, and then I'll be looking at a kind of a chip strategy video where I think the focus will be looking at players who still have the wildcard chip, the free hit chip, and then the bench boost versus kind of triple captain debate as well. I don't think it's necessarily clear cut because I actually think for the people who do have a lot of City players in their team, they're thinking about benching these City players when there's a very logical bench boost here. Obviously, the toss-up is that we don't have a clear double game week opportunity to triple captain someone as good as Salah. So we'll see what happens there. But take care, guys, and I will see you guys very shortly.